Hello, everybody. Today I am joined by Dr. Hanan Balkhy. Dr. Hanan is the first appointed Assistant Director General for the Antimicrobial Resistance Division, the World Health Organization. Dr. Hanan is also a clinician and a researcher with over 150 publications. Dr. Hanan graduated with an MD from King Abdulaziz University in Saudi Arabia. She went on to do a pediatric residency at Massachusetts General Hospital in Boston and completed a pediatric infectious diseases fellowship at Cleveland Clinic Foundation and Case Western Reserve University in Ohio. Dr. Hanan is a public health leader that has focused on elevating attention to the global antimicrobial health threat in Saudi as well as the region, and now has a broader mandate while leading this agenda from Geneva at the WHO headquarters. Dr. Hanan, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Dr. Jaffar. Thank you for having me with you today. Pleasure.
Pleasure. Dr. Hanan, your story is incredibly inspirational. Did you always know that you wanted to do this and follow this career path?
Thank you, Saeeda, for the question. I think at every step of your career, there's different aspirations that you have and things that you want to do. And I think the path that you're talking about now evolved with multiple changes in the original plan. So the original plan was to be a clinician, take care of patients, then take care of children, so going from being a general physician to a pediatrician. But then I think the opportunity really opened up by coincidence when I came back from my training in Cleveland. So I did pediatrics in Boston, then I did infectious disease fellowship in Cleveland. And when I came back, the opportunity opened up for me to lead the infection prevention and control program at the Ministry of National Guard. And that was the moment where I realized that as a clinician, you can do more than one-on-one patient care. You can take care of programs that makes sure that groups of patients are healthy and they are not receiving any kind of harm from being in the healthcare setting. And that really opened my mind. And then in the following 15 years, I started engaging in more hospital-based activities, then national, then regional, and now I'm at the global level, which is very, very rewarding.
Wonderful. Who were your role models during your career?
Many, actually. I think one is lucky when there's so many amazing people around you, people that you want to model, whether, role models can be in, the way they present, they can be in the way they did their career. Female role models on how certain powerful women were able to balance their social life with their family life, with the work. But I think if I want to give credit to who put me on the right path, it was really my family. I think my dad was very keen on education of all of his children. And after that, I had two siblings who were ahead of me in medical school. So those were my very early role models. And then after that, I was just surrounded by amazing people who really worked really hard at what they do. And I was just hooked with many of them during my path.
That's fantastic. And it's so true. I think there are role models everywhere we look. One just has to look and reach out to find them. Do you think that there is enough emphasis on role models, on mentorship for the younger generation today?
I think you can do it either. Some people do it, when they're mindful about it, and some people just, when doing a good job, you can be a mentor by not necessarily knowing you're being a mentor. But I think performing well, having the right work ethics, having the right dedication, being kind, being patient with your mentees, with your students, with your patients. So that's the type of role modeling that I think we need more of. And then because when you're a professor at a university or you're teaching residents at the bedside, it is part of your job to train them and teach them. But the role modeling talks about the extra behavioral things that we do. Again, it's about our ethics, how we treat our patients, how we approach research, how we approach collaboration in our work setting, And I think we need to be more mindful that those behaviors that we do create either good role models or creates bad role modeling, which some junior people will, if they see the wrong things happening by several mentors, they assume that that's the right way of doing business, either at the bedside or at the research area. So I think we need to be mindful that there are a lot of junior people watching us when are in the middle or in our senior career levels, and we need to pay attention that we are role models to the junior members of our society without knowing it. And that's one of the reasons why we have to be mindful of that. Intentional role modeling is also very important, that we in medical schools have also changed in the new way of education of physicians and healthcare providers, where we are taught how to be better mentors. And I think we need more of that as well, so that we can be mindful of what we're doing.
Very nice. And I think that's the point is absolutely right. Whether we like it or not, we are all role models. So we might as well accept the responsibility and live up to it. Absolutely. As we speak, we're still in the midst of the pandemic. COVID-19 is still around us. It's still a very big part of our lives. In your opinion, as a leading epidemiologist, how did we get here?
I think it was kind of inevitable. Being in a pandemic was something in the infectious disease community, infection control community, infectious disease research scientists, emerging pathogen communities, multiple sciences cross-cut in this area. And we've been talking about pandemics for years. We know that it was going to happen. Maybe the surprise was it's not the flu pandemic, it's a corona pandemic. The other thing is that a lot of us did not imagine that we would really live it. And the fact that it would have been an influenza pandemic, the likelihood of finding a vaccine was going to be even quicker, maybe half the time or a quarter of the time. But it did take us a much shorter than expected time to reach to the coronavirus vaccine, the COVID or SARS-CoV-2 vaccine. The painful part is the longevity of the pandemic now and how it's dragging on, and a lot of the side effects that is taking place from the mental perspective, mental health, social, and definitely the economical impact that we see.
Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense. Do you think we've handled it well?
I think it's hindsight is 2020, right? But I think the question is, were we prepared? And it's very clear that we were not prepared at all levels. And I think even high income countries, mid upper income countries, low income countries, we were all unprepared in different ways, and some countries were prepared in some ways. So the question is, what are we going to learn at the national, subnational, regional, sub-regional, and then at the global level? I think there were many positive things that came out. It allowed us, it really humbled us. I think that's a good statement. It humbled us to a degree that no one now will come out and say, we are ready. I don't think any country would be able to say that, because I think each country and organization has identified gaps that can be addressed, that can be much better prepared. I think there's going to be at the national level better preparedness of access to healthcare, better preparedness in creating healthcare systems that have more resilience, in accommodating more patients, in moving the healthcare provision that you have from the routine to an outbreak situation. That's something that we like to practice a lot in the healthcare setting, going from elective procedures to emergency procedures. At a regional level, how do regions work more collaboratively together to, for example, procurement, distribution of vaccines? How do we start engaging communities of different equities, for example, in clinical trials? So when these medications, vaccines, or diagnostics, we are sure that they are applicable to the different cultures, communities, and societies. So how can we work more together? I think working together, collaboration, and thinking ahead of time is extremely important. And one maybe last point is that even the vaccine development did not occur overnight. The companies and the research that led to the vaccines on the market now started many years ago, and they've leveraged on the science that existed, for example, in the RNA vaccines in another platform, in the whole, the live attenuated vaccine technology existed, the protein vaccines existed. So there was a lot of knowledge before, and it gave the research development for SARS-CoV-2 vaccine development a major jumpstart that people don't recognize. Then working with regulatory bodies, with pharma, with R&D collaboratively allowed for a better readiness of the countries to be prepared. And I think the WHO, the World Health Organization, played an instrumental role, of course, with many partners at the table in preparing the countries for the rollout of the vaccines. And we continue to work with our partners under the ACT Accelerator initiative launched last year during the World Health Assembly. So there was a lot of enhancement of networks and collaboration for where we are today.
Okay, makes a lot of sense. Look, you mentioned this multiple times. I think one of the reasons we are where we are and we've been able to handle things the way we have is the vaccine, which is fundamentally built on R&D and our ability to leverage a lot of R&D that has happened in the past and to very quickly adapt what we needed to get to a vaccine. You have been very actively involved in driving the region's research agenda for a long time now. In your opinion, how have we progressed so far?
Yeah, that's a very important question, which was my previous life. I think the interesting part is that when I was a fellow at Case Western Reserve, there was a project that was really bench based. It was immunology of salmonella infection. And when I came back in '99, I went to a government hospital that had no research entity. So I kind of dropped that whole idea of doing research, except for publishing epidemiological data that existed in the infection control department and some smaller scale studies. And then the big revolution in my career path is when our organization transformed into an academia and a research entity was established. So again, building it from scratch to me was a major eye opener on what are the true deficiencies that exist. And I think I can talk about this topic for hours because I'm very passionate about it, but I think as a clinician, you're not necessarily a researcher or a scientist. And you don't necessarily have the skills that will allow you to pursue a career in really informative and impactful research. Um, so at the time, I was kind of skeptical when a colleague of mine who was ahead of me in trying to establish the research center with our organization leadership. And I was like, but we don't do research here. I've done it for 2 years. I've been in a very high level research center. And I was skeptical that we will be able to do it. But I think when you dream about something, it will motivate you to move forward. And I think from 2007, when this happened, till today, the research center that I was engaged with has leaped miles ahead. And yet there's other really great examples apart from my own personal example and experience. But I think it requires patience, and I think there's talking about, so when it first started, I wasn't doing infectious disease research. I established research education and promotion. So developing workshops, sorry, for scientific writing, grant writing. Then we developed a clinical research training coordinator program. And when we started, we only had two programs, which was Statistics Made Easy, and another one was about clinical research coordinators. We ended up with 15 programs within 3 years. And then, again, we were very well resourced. We established the multiple entities within the research center, but I'll talk about my area, which was the infectious disease research department, which now has a major platform for antimicrobial resistance research. banking isolates and pathogens of concern, performing whole genome sequencing for resistant organisms, and also bioinformatic analysis. And the team, after I left, they continued with that work. And the other main area with another team was developing vaccines, and they carried out the work that was done at the Jenner Institute. And these two programs are led by two young Saudi PhD holders who have done a really good job, and were able to create a good collaborations at the local and regional and global level. So I'm very happy for their progress as well, and the caravan continues to march forward. It requires handing over the torch, and breeding more people who are passionate about what I like to call hardcore, real, informative, impactful research. And then we need to start building, and there are also seeds of that in Saudi Arabia, but also with the region of developing the manufacturing capacity for producing vaccines and therapeutics. Collaboration again about emerging pathogens, and that's where the whole genome sequencing part comes into play. So there's we have a long way to go. It's not overnight. It requires perseverance. It requires breeding leaders, collaboration, and being very visionary, and keeping your eye on the ball. There are a lot of distractions, right? So we need people to keep their eye on the ball to keep this moving.
Absolutely. It is always easy to get distracted. And I think one of the critical skills to learn is indeed how to identify the areas to focus, prioritize, and then remain focused, relentlessly focused. So, couldn't agree more. So not only, Dr. Hanan, are you a very well respected scientist in your field, you are also very, very active in promoting the role of women and female leaders across the Middle East. And over the years, you have been part of that journey and you have seen the change, you have seen the growth. Share perhaps with us some of, some elements of that journey and perhaps some of the moments that have made you the proudest to have been a part of this.
Great question, and it's very important. I think one of the motivations for me to mentor and assist young women in their careers is because I felt the sense of privilege. I came from a background of my family's background is very keen on education, so education and progressing in my career was really not an option. It's going to happen. And to me, I think I was very, very lucky. So education, being a working mother, a working wife, a mother of two boys, it's something that it was never a second thought for me. That's how it is, and that's how it was going to be. When I started, when I came back from my training and I started working in a department where I'm now with colleagues who may not have had that background, it hit me really hard about how difficult it could be for some of the women, how difficult it could be even just to pursue their education, to continue with their education. And many of these women were extremely bright and extremely motivated. And their fascination with what I was doing only made me more humble and more wanting to help, because they thought that what I was doing was just super powerful or extraordinary. And in fact, I felt, well, that was my only option. My family, that's what my parents put us on that path. My older sister is a physician. My older brother is both of them are very high achievers. So for me, that was the only way to go. And I think it allowed me within my department that I was leading back home to make sure that I accommodated some of the challenges that either men or women, actually, not just the women, that they might have because of our cultural structure. And as a Saudi, as someone who was raised there, mingles, with the communities very well, understands the religious and social and cultural backgrounds, it was easy for me to do two things at the same time. to create that environment for them, to ensure that I continue to motivate them, and at the same time not be judgmental and lose hope in their potential. And when you're part of a culture, you can do that easily. When you're not part of the culture, it's easy to become judgmental and lose hope in the potential of some of these individuals, and many of them actually, to progress and excel and achieve at very high levels. And I think that's something that I'm very proud of. I hope to continue to do for the rest of my life. I try as much as possible to connect with younger professionals as much as possible, and if I have something to provide them, I'm always keen on doing so.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. One of the things that you mentioned when we spoke last was you heard many times women being told that they are either too nice or extremely difficult to work with.
Yeah, stereotyping is easy, to try to. Yeah, and I go back and forth between how I think about those statements. When we're too nice or not, I think what would help women and men, but more particularly women, because they are labeled sometimes if they're too outspoken or too much of a seen as an achievers or bold in their comments. They're considered to be difficult. I think what would help any individual is to be professional, so that trying to avoid being emotional, but at the same time being scientific. I don't think that we will ever stop individuals around us from trying to label us, trying to limit, trying to put that glass ceiling for women. But I think what would really help is to ensure that we perfect what we do. And I prefer to see that in men and women, but more so in women, because again, they will be challenged more often. I did witness that. I see that. I think women need to ensure that they're always not bringing themselves down from the comments. Uh, I feel that men tend to brush things off quickly and stand up on their feet quicker. They're a bit more resilient than women. There are a lot of amazing women role models out there, but I think women probably need to do more of that and to be proud of their achievements, to understand what their achievements are, to realize their strengths. Um, so those are some of the things, but I find that it's going to be difficult to change that stigmatization, which still exists today. I personally don't pay too much attention to it. It's, there's so many critics out there, but you just try to continue forward. I have also been labeled at times as being too tough, not very merciful. But then it's good. It allows me to reflect a little bit, and then realize, yeah, no, sorry, this is how it is. This is how you do business. And but I think allowing yourself to reflect and listen is always good, because we're not perfect. Well, but I hope that answered the question.
It did. No, it did. I think it did. And I think, frankly, it helps a lot of women who deal with the same issues day in and day out, right? At what point, what's the balance? When do you assert yourself versus when do you actually be nice and be a team player? And you're right, there is no right answer. And rightly or wrongly, women tend to get judged on this perhaps a bit more. You raised another very, very important point, which is that women tend to judge themselves very harshly as well. And that women tend to be very self-critical and sometimes underestimate their abilities. And is this something that you've seen a lot in your career?
Yes, yes, absolutely. I think that's very true. It might differ from one culture. It might be more in one community or one culture more than another. And we all do it. I did that to myself as well, specifically after having children. You worry, am I doing a good job? I think women are more easily to take blame of anything going wrong in the household than men, and that's something that I reflected on a lot. But having that strong family around you that does not give the guilt trips, that really picks up the burden of work that needs to be done for the family part is extremely important. And then also allowing yourselves to take those breaks when needed to, if there is the necessity for doing it for a parent or a sibling or a child or a spouse. And again, I think one of the things I reflected on a lot is men will give themselves the excuses to take care of their parents, for example, but not so much for the children at times. And it's okay. But if a female tries to take, some time to take care of the children, it's a little bit looked at as a weakness. And I think understanding what is it that you want, what makes you happy, how is your career progressing, and the speed, and also not comparing yourself too much with people around you, because every individual has their own scenario, their own story, their own circumstances, their own limitations. And I think, you know, we're on the, I think about it, I become a little bit spiritual when I think about this. We're all on this earth for a short period of time. So whatever I can do to keep myself healthy, my family healthy, and then to be so privileged to work with an organization that helps and aims to make the world healthy is something that's really fascinating. Um,
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Dr. Hanan, what advice would you like to give to some of the younger women and men that are just starting out their career?
I think I might have mentioned it a little bit, but I think it's loving what you do. Try to get in the field that you love as much as you can. You find your value and you serve something bigger than yourself, of course. I think that always creates a peace in a person's mindset. And then perfect it. Do it so well. Do the best that you can at your job. And you have to love it, right? If you want to do something really well, you have to continue to repeat it, reflect on it, do it better. If you look at sports, they're passionate about a specific sport. They videotape themselves, they look at how they're performing, they change their moves. I think if we used our jobs as something that we're very passionate about, reflect on how well we're doing, and going back and trying to improve it over and over again, then you will find satisfaction and progress. I always try to advise sometimes I find that the younger generation are keen on, they want the end product, or, the Nobel Prize, or they want, the research paper, or, the professorship title. But that's the end product. That's the byproduct of a career that is um, fed by love and passion and professionalism. And those things will eventually come, because if they don't come, you already enjoyed the journey. And that's critical. You need to enjoy that journey. And then when the icing on the cake arrives, when you get that end point, then you'll realize that it's not that big of a deal. And then you go on to the next journey, and then the next one, and the next one. You're continuing to enjoy your life. But if the aim was that end product and you don't get it, it becomes disappointing. So I think those are some of the things that I learned. This comes a little bit under the science of motivation. How do you motivate yourself?
That makes sense. Life is indeed a journey, not a destination. You have to enjoy the ride because you never know where things are going to go, how things are going to end up. Wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Hanan. It's been an absolute pleasure having you with us
Thank you,
today.
Dr. Saida. Thank you for having me with you, and happy Female Day and happy Human Day, and stay healthy and happy.
Thank you. You too.